In the previous lecture, you learned the concept of visual completion. If I show you this image and ask you what you see in it, it's likely that you say it's a square, and behind the square there is a circle, and behind the circle there is a bar. Well, the thing is that it is not the single possible answer, because it is likely that these are indeed incomplete objects. You remember the story about incomplete cars in the first lectures, so it is actually the same thing. Here the point is that we can use or employ linguistic descriptions to understand people's perception of the visual world. But the question is, what if we don't have names for these objects? It is interesting that we have names for almost all those objects around us. This topic brings us to concepts and categories, and it also suggests that, this question suggests that vision is closely related to our conceptualization of the world around us, or at least our conceptualization of the objects in the world. So very briefly, research findings show that we identify objects as members of noun categories. The term category, in its most basic form, refers to an abstract level characterization of objects. Suppose that all of a sudden you see an animal that jumps into the room. Also suppose that it is not your pet at home. It is very likely that you will immediately recognize this animal as a member of an animal category, let's say a dog or a squirrel. Even if this is an animal that is difficult to recognize, such as a tarsier, and even if you know what a tarsier is, you will recognize it as maybe a monkey first. A more extreme example is this. Here are pieces of art called non-objects. These are, of course, non-objects. What is interesting is that after looking at them for a while, we start perceiving partial objects in it. It is not an illusion, or there is no trick. So what I mean is more straightforward. The point is that we do not recognize these objects as non-objects, but we try to make approximations to the objects that are already in our world knowledge. Another demonstration of this is the recognition of faces in the clouds. I am sure that many of you perceived faces, vegetables, animals, and other objects in clouds. These cases show our tendency to perceive objects in the external world as members of known categories. We may assume that concepts are mental representations that refer to categories. The formation of concepts is an interesting topic of research in itself. Children acquire concepts during their childhood. For example, they develop the category of animals, such as cats, and recognize single cats, cat tokens, as members of the cat category. Indeed, categorization looks like the output of a kind of pruning process, which reduces the richness of our conceptualizations, but in turn, it supports our survival by reducing the complexity of perceptions through simplification by categorization. A review of the literature on concepts and categories shows that there are so-called basic level concepts. These concepts refer to the preferred level of categorization. So if I tell you that I will now bring a chair into my mind's eye, I mean a chair in a general sense, it is very likely that we will have mental images of different chairs, but it does not prevent our communication anyway. Indeed, the words that name basic level concepts are the words that a child acquires. There are also superordinate levels of categorization, so I may be using the term furniture, which is a superordinate level category for chair. a subordinate level that may be Windsor chairs. There are several theories of categorization. For example, probabilistic theories of concept representation state that categories are formed by approximations to a prototype or an exemplar. These terms are used for describing mental representations of categories in memory, in a sense, an average that is created in personal experience. The details of these theories are beyond the scope of these lectures, but the take-home message is, in this lecture, the take-home message is that visual perception is not only a bottom-up activity, but our world knowledge has a significant impact on visual cognition. In the next lecture, I will introduce a working definition as well as theoretical frameworks for visual cognition.